Let's switch to gender studies now. And Arkansas could become the first state in the entire country to ban transgender medical treatments for kids. Doctors who choose to treat transgender kids could also lose their medical licenses in that state. The Arkansas bill also opens up doctors to lawsuits if they do treat transgender kids and those kids later regret their medical procedures. 16 other states, as we indicated, are also considering similar bills here. Now, Mississippi has also stepped into this transgender discussion. They've also enacted a law this month that bans athletes who are designated male at birth from playing women's or girls' sports at public schools or universities. Mississippi is the first state this year to enact such a ban. Another federal court blocked an Idaho law similar to theirs last year. We've also talked in great detail about what's going on in South Dakota. Let's welcome in now Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves. Governor, great to see you again.
Thanks, John. How are you doing today? I hope well.
I'm doing great. Can't complain here. The New York Times says that trans girls are the new focus of Republicans in the culture wars. Is that how you see it? This is just a new front in the culture wars?
Well, first of all, we wouldn't be having this conversation today were it not for the fact that Joe Biden, as one of the first things that he did once elected and sworn in to the presidency, is to sign an executive order which made these steps necessary. I have 3 young daughters, and I believe very strongly that we've got to do what we have to do to protect opportunities for young female athletes across the country.
Right. And that's, again, what this is really all about, and what, it's pretty consistent with Republican doctrine is, creating an equality of opportunity, not necessarily an equality of outcome, which I think distinguishes Republicans from Democrats. They want equality of outcomes.
Well, you're exactly right, and when you try to force the opportunity for biological males to be on the same playing field with biological females, therefore taking away opportunities for young girls across America, I just think that was a very poor thing for President Biden to do. I think that it forced those of us who want to protect young females across the country to take action. My legislature stepped up and sent me a bill, and I was proud to sign it.
What's your take on Governor Noem? She's facing some backlash for not being, I guess, as firm as you have been, kind of kowtowing a little bit to the pressure of the NCAA. You don't seem as concerned.
Well, I'm not concerned about the pressure. I believe very strongly that those of us that are elected to office have to stand up and do what we think is right. And I'm not all familiar with what's going on in other states, but my legislature is currently, hopefully, in their last day or last 2 days, and we've been focused on that. But in our state, and I've been able to do this throughout my entire career, I believe that certainly Republican voters, and really voters across the aisle as well, reward elected officials who step up and do what they think's right, whether they agree with it or not. The one thing about this issue, though, is 85 to 90% of Americans agree with the position that we are taking. It's only the fringe and only the far left that pushed President Biden to sign this executive order. I don't even think a majority of people in his own party agree with trying to take away female athletes' opportunities and give those to biological males.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about this. How many times has this actually come up in Mississippi or other states? I know we've talked about a case in Connecticut as well. But again, this is one of those things that seems to be disproportionate in terms of priorities here and how many people are affected. We'll set that aside for a moment because I also want to talk about, your stance on these mask mandates. We're hearing today that the Wisconsin Supreme Court, or I guess maybe the federal Supreme Court from what I'm seeing here, has tossed out a Wisconsin mask mandate. You rescinded the mandate in Mississippi back on March 2nd, the second state to do so. How are things going down there for you guys as it relates to COVID?
Well, things are going exceptionally well here in Mississippi, and the reason they're going well here in Mississippi is the fact that Mississippians don't have to be told what to do by their government. They're willing to step up and do what they think's right for themselves. And so we haven't had a statewide mask mandate in place since the summer. We did county by county mandates in Mississippi throughout the fall, the winter, and the early part of the spring. And what we found is the numbers simply no longer justified any mandates in our state. The far left wants us to focus on the data and focus on the science when the numbers are going up, and then they want us to ignore the data and ignore the science when the numbers are going down.
Yeah.
I took all mask mandates off in the state of Mississippi over a month ago, and our numbers have gone from approximately 600 cases per day to less than 220 cases per day. So we've cut it by 2/3 over the last month, and that's from a peak of 2,400 cases per day. So we're down over 90%, John, over 90% since our peak at the beginning of the year. And so we're actually doing well. Our hospitalizations have plummeted. Our number of patients in ICU beds have plummeted. And that's a good thing. And it's because we have a new tool in the toolbox, and it's called a vaccine. And we have
what do you think, Governor, about these
1.25 million shots delivered so far?
We talked about this yesterday. New York instituting vaccine passports, a digital kind of form of that. Also, there's talk within the Biden administration about having a federal vaccine passport. I would imagine you're no fan of that idea either.
It's just yet another example of the Biden administration and others that are close to them not understanding the proper role of government and trying to overreach and force Americans to do things. We believe in liberty, we believe in opportunity, and we believe in allowing Mississippians and all Americans to make choices for themselves. You mentioned the difference in philosophies earlier, and this is very important. This administration has a true philosophy and a true belief that everything is better if Washington, D.C. is making 100% of everyone's decisions. And I just couldn't disagree with that more.
Right. You know, again, philosophically speaking, you take away a lot of the hyperbole surrounding the differences between Democrats and Republicans. And it comes down to this, I think, Governor, that Democrats believe the government is here to protect them from everything, whereas Republicans feel like they need protection from the actual government these days.
Well, many of these liberal elites think that they know better what's good for you than you know what's good for you. They believe that if you would just let them make your decisions for you, then you would be far better off. We just find that very, very difficult to believe.
Well, let's talk about another issue affecting the city of Jackson, Mississippi. The folks there have had no potable water for a while. This is not getting a lot of coverage, but repairs are underway. Dozens of broken water mains and other equipment. But Jackson's 161,000 residents remain under a boil water advisory. But, you know, we're talking about the infrastructure bill the federal government wants to play. It's massive. I've heard anything from $2.5 to $10 trillion. Is there anything for Mississippi's water crisis in there? I mean, I know we're talking about equity when it comes to racial inclusion, things like that. There's all kinds of pie-in-the-sky ideas in the infrastructure bill. But is there anything in this bill that the president's touting that's going to help Mississippi?
Well, I haven't seen the bill yet, and I know he's allegedly going to talk a little bit about it today, but you're right. The numbers have gone anywhere from $2 trillion to $10 trillion. Surely there would be something in a package of that size that would be helpful. Look, in America and in Mississippi, we need to spend more money on infrastructure. Yeah. Now, we need to understand that should be a priority because public infrastructure is a core function of government, and therefore we need to prioritize that infrastructure. We don't just need to go borrow more and more money from China so as to invest in infrastructure. We need to prioritize it. We need to invest in it. We need to recognize it as important. And that's something that we have been talking about in our state for a number of years. We've done infrastructure packages in Mississippi where we're spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year more on roads and bridges and water and sewer systems and other public infrastructure systems. We need to do more. And certainly the federal government has a role to play in that. But we also have to understand the other side of it, which is where is this money coming from? And it used to be coming from our kids. And I felt bad about leaving this debt to our kids. But it's no longer about our kids. It's my kids' grandkids that are going to have to be
paying. And great-grandkids. I mean, when you think about, when we're talking about trillions of dollars, tens of trillions of dollars, potentially, there seems to be no limit on this. And my point here, Governor, is that there are real, like you said, real infrastructure needs in this country. And, you know, the state of Mississippi is not responsible, per se, for every single city. But again, you have all these pie-in-the-sky ideas that Democrats are talking about, Green New Deal and things like that, when we have real needs like down there in Jackson, Mississippi. Wish it would get more attention instead of some of the social justice stuff. Great to see you. Governor, thanks so much.
Great to have me.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.